Hello, everyone out there. Today we'll be discussing Far From Heaven, released in 2002, written and directed by Todd Haynes. Notable for being sort of Haynes' attempt to kind of replicate the style of Delig Sirt's melodramas from the 1950s and kind of replicating that style. And I think it really fits into the category of a melodrama quite obviously in a lot of ways. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I think it fits into melodrama the most in what we were learning in class as the kind of core themes of melodrama. So it's kind of two of the core themes. So it's like the idea of forbidden or impossible love because of community and societal pressures. And it's on both sides. It's the husband's kind of forbidden love because he is attracted to men, and that's like their society treats that as like an illness, as like something that should be like cast out.
Mm-hmm.
And the wife, which is kind of the more main plot, but the husband sets off this plot, is her forbidden love with a man who is black.
Raymond Keegan, played by
Dennis Haysbert, and the husband is Dennis Quaid, played Frank Whitaker. And then Kathy Whitaker is the wife, played by Julianne Moore.
So what you're saying is even though Frank Whitaker is not our main character, his love is still there. It also kind of ties into that theme of forbidden love.
Yeah,
but
because
then also,
of social pressure.
Raymond and Kathleen Whitaker's love is also impossible because of racial tension.
I want to note like one interesting departure from melodrama. Like I know one element is like how close-ups are used to kind of like emphasize actors' reactions. But I think that the film actually, I know that there was kind of like there were some, but they put more emphasis on like group shots, which I think emphasizes the kind of like you're talking about the societal community pressure, as opposed to like individual emotions. It captures the collective feelings of the group about Kathleen's relationship with Deegan.
Yeah, I agree. Because going in, like I just didn't. Like I was aware of like what shots to look for. I was aware of like looking for close-ups, but I didn't feel like I was getting that many of them. Like,
and I just want to add, like, I sensed that it was also very much a melodrama in the cinematography of everything. I felt like the way that the costumes and the way that the script was written was not only like very like formalistic. It wasn't a the color and mise en scène in the scenes was there to give us to give us an emotional response. And I also noticed that like the lighting was very unique and very intentional and like well crafted throughout like all of the scenes where we were supposed to feel emotional impact, and that really like set the feeling of what the film was, and like that was kind of the thing that stood out the most to me in this movie.
Yeah, I mean, I did notice that it was like, maybe I'm using completely the wrong word, but it's like a little oversaturated, or like there's just a lot of, in some scenes, there's just a lot of light. It just feels soaked in light.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree.
And it feels like overall, the mise en scène, the color, the costuming just kind of like soaks you in that setting of the suburban 50s, like, and her kind of slightly, her like over the top, like her dresses and the scarf, and so that all feels very like typical melodrama too. I think.
Yeah, I would say it does fit into kind of like the set design and costuming of the 1950s, but I think it just goes a step beyond in the sense of melodrama, where it kind of just takes all the colors, all the set design, and just turns it up a notch. But where it really wants to emphasize that kind of emotion, like through the design.
What kind of emotion?
Well, it kind of depends. Like, I feel like color is such a notable thing. I know me and Justin had a bit of a discussion about this earlier regarding blues and greens, just the consistent emphasis of those two colors.
Yeah.
Like, Justin, if you want to get a little bit.
Well, I noticed something while watching the film, which was every scene seemed to be color coded. And I'm pretty sure they were associated with like the story, and like it was trying to elicit emotional reactions from us. And it really reminded me of like the movie La La Land, where there is a theme for each scene, and like it's very hard to interpret what the theme means. And I actually looked it up after, and got some knowledge of like what it's supposed to mean. And like what the director talked about in the like the DVD extras of it was that he used the color green to light like forbidden scenes. And the example of that is when Frank visits a gay bar, and then when Kathy's in the restaurant with what's his name?
Raymond?
Yeah.
Raymond.
When Kathy's in
Yeah,
the
Raymond.
restaurant, they're both like very green, just like there's a green undertone in everything. And then apparently the color blue was there to represent like Frank and Kathy's falling apart relationship.
Yeah.
And this is something that like I definitely noticed on my own without doing research, because I didn't do any research before going into this film. But like after it was said to me, like all of my thoughts were kind of made clear, and it was like these like feelings that the director gave us became so obvious to me, and it was like, how did I not notice that?
Yeah, I went back and I was kind of just looking for like a dark color blue and see where it stood out. And so when he first kind of goes to when Frank Whitaker first goes to the movies, that's kind of like coded in blue lighting. When they have and also after Kathy Whitaker walks in on her husband, and they end up going home, that scene is just painted in blue pretty much. And their kind of argument, where Frank ends up hitting Kathy in the face, that scene's also just powerful blue light in there, just so noticeable. And just what you're saying before just holds true, like in so many moments.
Deep blue.
Deep blue, yeah.
Yeah, I also think the dialogue seems in some moments very theatrical. I was noticing, or just that one scene in the theater or outside of the theater where everyone kind of surrounds, or it's before that they get surrounded, but they're just talking. And I can't remember the exact line, but it's like Raymond Deegan says something that is just not like that no one would actually say. It was very poetic and kind of like his cadence. And so it's very like, to me, it feels very acted. And for what it is, well acted. Like, and it's entertaining. The line hit hard. I'm struggling to remember what it was, but it was something. It was like wordplay.
I mean, yeah, and we should definitely talk about like writing, because it's different from everyday speech. But I don't know
if you guys,
Professor, did you have like what are your initial thoughts on this film? I know you're like the expert, so like I'd love to hear.
No, I'm not an expert. I'm just a little older than you guys are. That's all I got. I saw this film when it came out, and that's why I'm really glad to be talking about it, and glad to have been sort of forced by Manon to watch this yesterday, because oftentimes I say that with a laugh, because oftentimes I don't have time to sit down and watch a whole feature film these days. I got kids and I'm really busy with my own stuff, and so sitting down to watch a narrative feature was just like a real joy, especially because it was part of what I have to do for my job. So, especially this film, because I really do like it. And I don't know, I always like hearing what you're saying, everybody's observations, and really impressed that, you took away so much from it. And obviously, close reading film and analyzing film for the first time, this, for some of you, I'm sure, is something that you've been learning this semester, and obviously it's sticking for all four of you. But it is interesting, like Giancarlo, I think you almost said the word oversaturated, and that word oversaturated is right on the money. Like that's the only word I would use to describe like the color and the light in this film. But it's also it's like the language is oversaturated. So you were just talking about the script, right? And the acting is oversaturated, right? And so the music is oversaturated. There's kind of and I don't mean that in a pejorative sense. Like I actually really love, like I said, I love this film. I know that's irrelevant when we're doing close analysis, but this film I found watching this, which I think was the second time I saw it, because like I said, I saw it in 2002 or 2003, and I just watched it again yesterday. So I was sort of I was bowled over a couple of times. I paused it and called my wife into the room, like she was working at home yesterday, and I was like, just look at this. Like, can you believe that this is like how blue and green this is, or how how colorful this is? Even the outdoors scenes that are more quote unquote naturalistic, they're just so beautiful, and I really like that. I tend to like that a lot. I mean, I have a colorist that works on my own films, and I don't color my own films. I mean, I know how to do it, but I don't think I'm particularly good at it. So I always want to oversaturate things and make everybody's skin tone look really good, and everything should pop, and it's kind of, but it's just, I mean, I guess it's like a stock observation that this film is really colorful, because it's like so obvious because it kind of hits you over the head, but I just love the way it looks. And then the other thing I wanted to mention, I mentioned in the other class that I visited yesterday, the other discussion group that I visited yesterday, was because I didn't do a ton of reading or research. Like I said, I didn't have a ton of time to sort of study up on this, which I really would have loved to do, because Todd Haynes is a genius. And I listened to a podcast while I was commuting. It wasn't a particularly good podcast. I can't even remember the name of it, but they were talking about the difference between the way that the spaces were used, and it got me thinking about. So one of the observations of one of the podcast guys was like that all of the things about their marriage falling apart, the living room is essentially a bad place in this film. Dennis Quaid's character Frank insults her and hits her, and that he asks for a divorce. I mean, there's a lot of abuse toward Kathy's character, and kind of meanness and pettiness toward Kathy's character that takes place in that living room. That's supposed to be like, whether you live in an apartment or a condominium or a townhouse or a suburban house or a mansion, this room is supposed to be the kind of nucleus, right? It's like this kind of, or this comfortable area where you spend most of your time, and where your kids would be, your partner might be, or your friends would be when they're there. So and it's used in this kind of way where it's not only blue, but it's dark, right? So it's not pleasant blue. It's kind of like you get the sense that they're hiding, or we don't know what happens behind the curtains of a house, right? It's like these interior lives, and oftentimes they're not as good as they seem to be visually. And then you have Raymond's character, who, oddly enough, because he's a gardener, well, not because he's a gardener, but that's part of the impetus for her being outside with him. Their love, or their friendship, or their close relationship, which blossoms into what I believe is a loving relationship, and it's just an unrequited loving relationship. It really blossoms outside. I mean, it grows outside, and I'm using those words, blossom and grow. I didn't even mean to do that. That sounds ridiculous. But they're out in the leaves, and they're out in the trees, and in the garden, and in the green, and in the coppers and yellows and oranges of fall, right? Because it's the end of the year. So Raymond's character, they only have good conversations when they're outdoors. It seems like that they go to that club, that restaurant, and it's pleasant for a moment, but there are people staring at them, and it's not really pleasant. It's difficult for both of them to be in that space. So I just wanted to mention that about the color and the space, the way spaces were used in the film, because I think it's really an amazing thing.
Yeah, I think that leads directly into the comment that Kathy was making about how you can't. She says it's better to confess to people outside your circle, and so I think the idea of like, because Raymond is outside her circle, like in terms of like her social circle and her world, but also like physically they connect outside more than inside her home, which is to be her sanctuary.
Absolutely.
And
So sorry, go ahead, Giancarlo. Sorry.
Oh no. I was gonna switch the subject, but let's keep talking. What are you gonna say?
Well, no, it's just, again, because I have such affection for this film, I don't want to let this pass. So yeah, I mean, that's exactly right. I mean, but that use of her use of that word outside, but if you think about the way that friendships work, and the way that the romantic relationships work, or the way that you might relate to a therapist, right? Like a doctor, like for your mental health. You do think about how all of a sudden at the beginning of a relationship, right, you might be confiding in that person in a way that you don't confide with close friends in some ways, or with a doctor, right? If you go to a therapist, if you see a therapist for mental health purposes, all of a sudden you're saying things about your life, your interior life, that you're not telling your closest friends. And this happens with Patricia Clarkson's character later in the film. I think she feels really betrayed that that Kathy is so obviously taken with Raymond's character, but also that Raymond is like a good listener and like knows about modern art and like is all about aesthetics and beauty and is just this kind of like perfect person for her to be able to like relate to and actually cry in front of and actually emote in front of, you know? So yeah, I just wanted to, you know, support that point. Yeah.
I also want to bring up like her relationship with Raymond is much different than any other relationship in the film, because they start off with this kind of like, you know, her confiding in him, and like they have this bond that's I would argue is like on the surface appears to be like potentially, you know, a romantic interest there, but then it becomes clear that like they aren't really that compatible because of how deep their conversations are with each other. Because like I think that the way that she like shares so much with him makes it very difficult for them to have like a classic like romance and a classic love story, because like when you when you're starting off with a relationship in a film, there's a formula that you should follow, and like they don't really follow this formula. They kind of fool us into like you know, wishing for this forbidden love between them, but then like in reality it's not a good idea, because like they're better as a like two people who confide in each other and support each other through really difficult times.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess, I mean, but I did want them to be together, and I sort of felt like, I mean, I think that maybe Todd Haynes does that craftily in order to kind of fool us into thinking that this is even possible for them to do. But I couldn't help thinking about how relevant this film is in terms of people making choices about their lives, you know, when they're, you know, whether they're in college or middle-aged, whatever it is, that are based around what other people think of them or other people think is possible and not possible. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I think I think that was played really well. Personally, I fell for that. I think, and I think applying this to, even though it feels frozen in the 50s in a way, even though it was made in 2002, it kind of feels like it was made in the 1950s, as you said about Douglas Sirk. But I couldn't help but apply it to today and think, well, why not? Why can't they just be who they are and be what they want and be with who they want? You know, and it was like I had that aspirational feeling for the characters, which I think was the intention. But
I want to go back to something you said about why they're incompatible, because the fundamental problem of Kathy's relationship to her husband Frank is that they don't share anything at all. You know what I mean? So I think I don't think you can say that there being like her like deeper conversations with Deegan is like the fundamental like, you know, problem with their relationship, right?
Yeah.
I'm just gonna say I strongly disagree with you there.
Yeah.
Because I think the film's written in a way where Raymond's written to be kind of the perfect man for her. Like he's an intellectually like intelligent guy. He's compassionate, sharing. He has a daughter. He's a loving individual. He's written to be the kind of stock, kind of perfect man. And so I think their relationship, I think it could work outside of like the.
But what I would add is like the actual like compatibility between the two people, because they live in such different worlds, like makes it so that she like really doesn't have a choice but to not be with him. And then she's given one opportunity where like he leaves for Baltimore, and like she kind of has to visit, and like she's almost given the opportunity to move away with him, but then doesn't. And yeah, he says no.
He rejects her, right? I mean, he
Yeah,
says
yeah,
we can't
yeah,
be
he
together.
says
But
no.
what I think like that was the one moment where like she really wanted to like start a life with him, because like that was the moment that they could have like started over, and it could have possibly worked.
I mean, I don't think it's who they are as like, I don't think it's their like emotional compatibility. I
Mhm.
think it's just, like it's the impossible love of like the society surrounding them, like
Yeah,
in their
super-
positions.
it's very-
you know?
it's
it was
very
like
It's the
super-
racial
traumatizing.
tension.
Their
It's the
relationship
racial
was
tension
traumatizing.
going on. And it's the fact
His
that he has a
daughter was-
daughter. She still has like an ex-husband, a divorce going on with 2 kids. It's a relationship. I think with like if none of the other factors were there, they would work.
Yeah, it's
Okay,
very-
But
yeah,
all
yeah.
those factors.
Yeah.
The problems are very superficial, dude. They're like
Yeah.
really like perceptive. You know what I mean?
I mean that it's almost like we talk about this film. I mentioned this word oversaturated. We talk about this film being overwrought or being kind of like melodramatic, right? And everything's on the table. There's not a lot of implicity to it. Everything's out there for you to pick apart. We got race, we got gender, we got sexual orientation, we got all this stuff on the table. But I think there's some real careful realism portrayed in this too, which is that like Dennis Haster's Raymond's character, that's what would have happened probably like in this situation, like I mean, let's be honest, like as much as there have been interracial relationships since the time immemorial, it's still a fraught thing in communities, right? So, and this is 1957. So, I'm not saying things haven't gotten better or the ball hasn't moved forward, but like in 1957 in Hartford, like this is like way beyond the pale. Like, and if this person, yeah, I mean, even Kathy's thinking, it's like, how hard did she go after him, right? And not that hard. And he's like, there's no way, this can't happen. This is going to ruin my life, and more importantly, my daughter's life. And if it was just him, he probably wouldn't care, right? But it's about her. She's the one that got physically hurt by this, by the proximity to these people that obviously didn't give a rat's ass how they felt, So I thought that was like really well crafted realism in an otherwise, as we said, oversaturated and overwrought kind of film.
Yeah, I think the one bit of subtlety in their relationship, I would say, is that they don't say it, but they both have that understanding that like no matter what, this isn't going to work. No matter what we do, no matter how much we love each other, no matter how much we kind of were meant for each other, there's no way just being like the time period that their relationship would work, and they know that.
Yeah.
And I think once a daughter does get hurt, like you said, like Raven just has that realization, like, no, there's just no chance. There's no point.
I also think that's reflected in the I think like their acknowledgement of that is reflected in the way that they interact with each other, which is like what brought me to like the feeling that they're like the way that they're so vulnerable with each other makes them less compatible. And like you guys have definitely swayed me towards the side of them like being really like this they are a great couple. Like they should be together, and like they clearly, if in a perfect world, like they would be together. And so I think that like all of these things are emphasized in like in the form of the film. And I also think that like the way that the film is written like serves to like add to the melodramaticness of the film, and the way that like we see the way that she speaks doesn't seem realistic to me, and the way that the characters interact with her, especially her children, the way that her children like act around her and Frank is
It's Frank.
yeah, Frank. The way that the children act around them seems like it's like yelling at us what's going on and what the relationship is, and instead of using subtle subtle close-ups of your face and using very expressive acting, they just say stuff, and then the response tells us what to feel, and it works really brilliantly in this film, which is just I was noticing the way that they were talking as it seemed strange, but it worked really well for me.
Yeah, and I would say with Julianne Moore's acting, it wasn't typical. I wasn't so with the kind of soap opera acting, I think it was that, but it was also, it felt at a lot of points kind of restrained, and like she was just, I don't know, just a lot of the dialogue, and like it was kind of like a bit playful. There was a bit of sadness behind it a lot of the time, and I think it was mainly like she acted through her glances, like the way that they would see shots of her looking at Raymond or her husband or just other characters, like just like you could see it in those shots, and so it was like very, it felt oversaturated, but also in like a restrained kind of restricted way because of the forbidden love, and so she just kind of has to restrain her emotions for a lot of the movie, and we definitely see them let out.
Like the one, you remember that one shot with under the train station, and it's like the close up and zooming in on her.
Yeah.
And he's like in the middle of rejecting her, and then she's just like smiling the entire time. You're like, it was kind of creepy a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's because her
like,
characterization kind of like just kind of revolves around like your constant kind of restraining of her emotions, like 'cause she's in such like a tough position with her husband, and then she consistently just like tries to like keep everything together, keep her composure. Yeah. You rarely see her kind of let up this front of like happy, perfect kind of wife that everyone around the neighborhood sees her as. She constantly keeps that up, and it's kind of to a sad point where she's just trying so hard to like keep it like working with her husband, and we see it fall apart, but she's still just trying.
Yeah.
Mm.
And about the performances, you know, not only are they sort of trying to thread a needle, which is like they're trying to recreate it, the late 1950s or mid 1950s Douglas Sirk and All That Heaven Allows and that kind of, you know, heightened performances, but also it has to have some kind of sensibility where people aren't going to run for the hills. I mean, I think Giancarlo somebody said soap opera, you know, but you know, if you think about Dennis Haysbert's performance, that wasn't soap opera acting at all. Like he's rock solid, right? And he's supposed to represent something stable and something virtuous, right? Whereas Dennis Quaid is kind of wild and all over the place, and Julianne Moore is like trying to keep it together, right? Always on the verge of tears, essentially. And I think that was an interesting disruption of the idea of like matching performances, or that they all have to be acting in one particular manner. It seemed like there was some juxtaposition there, which was non-traditional as well. Like even the character of that Viola Davis plays, the maid, she's sort of like a voice of reason in the film in a way. Like I always like wonder like if that part should have been bigger, you know, like she's kind of always kind of giving, you know, like looking askance at Kathy and just like, you're playing with fire here, you know, like this person has more wisdom than Kathy in this situation for sure. And so yeah, I like the acting. I thought the performances were good. I'm curious though, like, I don't know if you give this any thought, but like if you were to go home wherever you guys are from and like show this to like your you know 3 best friends or whatever, like what would they think? Like, is this a film you could watch with friends? Like, and would people understand why this is something that is taught in film school or something? Yeah. Go ahead.
Here's the thing. I think this is just like, it definitely isn't how it necessarily should or can be, but like the way it works is I can imagine some of my female friends being more into this than my male friends. And I feel like I could watch it, and it's just, it doesn't have anything, it's just like their particular personalities. One of my best friends, she loves melodrama as a genre. Yeah. And so like, I just think this would work, and it feels like it's a melodrama, but it's not escapism. It is escapism, and a lot of it just the kind of the color and the beauty of like the shots, but the content is not escapism. Like you were saying, it is realism. So I think it's a good combination of kind of both.
Yeah. I think like the reason you would say that is not necessarily because of like the film form and because of like the fact that it's a melodrama. I think that's kind of because it's like a romantic movie with like a storyline that like evolves to kind of make us hopeful and feel like all warm inside, and then like suddenly, you know, just kind of breaks our heart like that. And if I think like watching this movie with my friends, I'm not sure if they would enjoy it if I didn't point out certain things in the movie. And this is something like I've actually experienced. And I've said this before, like it reminded me of the movie La La Land, which is like one of my favorite movies ever. And I've watched that movie with so many of my friends because like I just wanted to share it with them. And when I just watch it with them, like they sometimes are like, oh, I didn't care for it that much. Like, oh, it's a stupid romance musical, whatever. Like, you know, get over yourself, Justin. But then when I've watched it with like certain people and I've like pointed out certain aspects of color, of cinematography, and of costume design and set design, and like little like details of it that like really like moved me while watching it. And that made the people like them seeing kind of not only like how into it I was, but like opening my friends' eyes to what the to what the film like really is at its core, and to like more than just what the story is, to what the film, what you're watching, and like kind of what a masterpiece it is. It made them appreciate the film more, not just because like I appreciated it, and because like if you point out these obvious things that the director does, that like average viewers aren't supposed to notice and don't notice, but just like get the feeling of, I think it makes people realize like what a masterpiece and work of art these films are.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't see La La Land as like as much. I don't hold it high as much of an esteem as you, but I
we
agree.
shouldn't. La La Land's going to be a controversial discussion. We don't have to go there if we don't want
Yeah,
to.
no, yeah, okay. Brian, you can.
all right,
I don't mean to interrupt, Giancarlo. I don't mean to interrupt, but we could be here all day. You know.
that's true. That's very true. You got to focus on Far From Heaven.
Yeah, and I like I didn't mean to derail like that. But like what I noticed in Far From Heaven was that like first of all, like the music in Far From Heaven is just like something we could talk about for another 30 minutes. But like the way that the color, the music, the cinematography, and especially like costumes and set design, like all came together to create themed scenes that like would be pleasant to watch out of context. That's what like I think if I pointed that out to someone while watching this movie with them, it would increase their enjoyment of the film, because like you would start to notice and start to look at it from like a more, I guess, scholarly perspective.
Yeah, I want to hear from your classmates about, could they show this to their friends though too? Because I'm really curious about it. Yeah.
I thought for just like as a melodrama, I thought there was it had a lot more going on than just like a romantic. Like I feel like when people hear melodrama, it's always kind of like it just conjures up images of like sappy, like romantic, hour and a half, whatever. But I thought this was really different, and like I kind of went into it with that expectation, but I feel like most of my friends are like patient enough people to like, give it a shot, and it picks up, like it moves pretty quickly. I thought. So it's the pacing is different from most melodramas, I thought. And I think it just had like a lot more stuff going on, to the point where there's kind of like something there for everyone. Like there is a romantic part of it that people who do enjoy that sappier part of like of the melodrama genre can enjoy, but there's also like a lot of like social commentary and philosophical commentary and stuff that you can also kind of enjoy. And I think it's just also like a good plot, a good story.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Well said.
I don't think any of my friends would like this, to be honest. In all honesty, I just think I could point out whatever elements of film form I wanted to. I could do whatever, but I just don't think that my friends would just enjoy the style of melodrama. I don't think without that appreciation of the style or film in general, I don't think they would really get that much out of it.
Yeah.
Despite what I like about it, whether it is the social commentary or the romance, there's any elements, I don't think they would like how just over dramatic it is. I don't think it's a style that a lot of people, like a lot of my friends at least, would kind of just sit down and enjoy. They probably hate it.
It's really fascinating, just because I just know so many people that are either filmmakers or film buffs or film professors and stuff like that. So I'm sort of like going through the Rolodex in my mind. I'm trying to think like who I could show this to that would just really hate it. Like I think most of the people I know would really like it. I mean, I think I'm wondering about my dad, you know, like I'm thinking like, would he enjoy this? Like he loves movies. So it's not about like, well, because it's this or because it's that. I'm just wondering if he would like love this movie. Like I really love it. Like you know, so yeah, it's interesting to think about, you know, we're talking about this film that like, otherwise if this wasn't on your syllabus, it might not be a film we gravitated toward, but like, I don't know, like I said, as Manon would say too, like it's irrelevant whether we liked it or not. We're trying to close read it, right? But I think it sounds like you guys all sort of took something from it, or that it didn't put you off or think, oh God, I got to watch this. You know, it does kind of move, and it does sort of go from one thing to the other, and it's beautiful to look at. You could almost watch it with the sound off. So yeah, I don't know. I just was curious.
Yeah, no, it makes sense.
There's something I wanted to ask you guys about, like, how much do you think this is the whole, like he was talking about the classic like plot over character, and do you do you see the characters as kind of like two-dimensional like cutouts or like profiles of like suburban housewife, professional husband, and then it's more about how like the beats and how they react to those beats? Or do you think it's like a character driven, like an inherently like it's more of a draw? Because
I think it's very character driven, dude. Even like I was gonna say plot, and I thought about it, like even the like the momentum I might attribute to the plot is like pretty much the reaction of other characters to the social interactions of like the main characters. Like everything, all the drama, all the tension that happens is from the community reacting to the interaction, or to this kind of like to this disturbance in their community. So I think it's the whole plot is very dependent on the characters' interpretations and reactions to things.
I do agree with that, but I think it's important to like realize that because of the I think the way that it's a very formalistic film, I think that leads the characters to not, or am I using the wrong word? Or no, all right, so basically...
No, hold on. Formalism, I mean, this is formalistic in that there is a really, really obvious kind of attention to detail and almost like a set of rules that Todd Haynes is using here. And that's my understanding of something being formalistic. Is that a misuse of it?
I wouldn't say entirely. I mean, I think it's kind of just depends on like film form and how much it's. I think it is somewhat.
I would argue. So like this isn't the discussion, but like I do think it's leaning towards the formalistic side of the spectrum. And I think that because of that, for me, the characters don't exist out of the scenes that they're in as much as like as like if it were, you know, trying to just recreate like a certain like sequence of events, and I think like yes, the characters are like three-dimensional for me. Like I look at them as like who they are, not like the you know the spot in either society or the household that they fill. So like I'll like forget their names, but like that's what I think of them as. But at the same time, when they're not on screen, I kind of don't really think about what they're doing right then, because the way that they behave isn't really natural to me. The way that they speak isn't natural. And then also, like, I think the sequence of events that occurs when they're in scenes together, like the way that, you know, the kids run up to the parents, or the like when they arrive home and start telling them these like very, you know, stereotypical, or not stereotypical, like cliche things that they've done. I think that like made it more formalistic, and that was that had a really like deep effect on me. It almost like made me a little bit like sad, because it's they're reminding me of like this perfect life that like these types of films tend to show us and tend to make us like yearn for, but they don't have that life. And like no one has that life, you know.
It's not real, right? So and I think what's interesting about this being made in 2002 and then in about 1957, and the fact that we're still talking about race and gender and sexual orientation and it makes me think about, the way social media works too. Is like, we talk about each other in these ways on social media where there's no punishment for what we do, or we don't take any responsibility for words and for our actions on social media. And it's like these people are treating one another really poorly in this film. And so, yeah, it's a kind of a sad, that is an absolutely a sad thing. It made me feel sad too. Yeah. Justin.
Yeah.
I just want to go back to Justin's 2 points about like formalism and characterization. I just think like film form wise, I don't think it's like super formalistic, because I think a lot of it, like dialogue, is sort of just classical Hollywood realism. I think it's just a bit formalist in how much it turns up like the lighting and the costuming. I think that's a bit formalist. But about the characters, I don't know if I really see them as entirely three-dimensional. I kind of view them as sort of stock characters in a sense, just because like the father's just a distant father. The Raymond is just kind of like this perfect intellectual kind of man, and then the mother feels like just a really typical kind of housewife.
But they're all,
It's
they're all,
not-
they're all,
like,
they're all very
it's not a
typical.
bad thing. Like that's
Yeah, I'm not
And
saying
I
that.
also
I'm not
think they
saying that.
start off like that, but then what makes them different, like the father like being gay, and like her struggles with essentially everything, like everything that she deals with in the film sets her apart. So we start off with like what a film that like reminded me of I want to say those like I have this vision of the like the nuclear family 1950s style, like that. There's like commercials that
Mad Men a lot.
and I don't exactly know what it's called, but like the kind of the Hoovers
You mean Leave It to Beaver or something? Are you trying to like is it like an old TV show you're thinking about, sort of?
well, I'm thinking of like kind of like the old like American dream of
Yeah,
you
Norman
know,
Rockwell, and post World War II, everything's great in the 50s for everybody. It's like the conservative dream, right? Yeah.
Exactly. What from what's his name? Oh, it's falling from my brain now. What? No. All right. Well, it does. Oh yeah, Reagan. Yeah. Kind of like the like Reagan's America that they wanted, with like a white picket fence, like a bunch of kids and a big family. But like,
yeah, they still want that. It's not just Reagan. You can rattle off every Republican politician.
Yeah,
That's what they talk about. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think like it started off like that, and it's sort of showing us that at surface, but then it evolved into something that wasn't that. Like it kind of showed us how unrealistic that is, and it showed us how like we want that, and we see other people we think have it, but then if we closely look at their lives, they aren't that perfect. They have a lot of issues.
They're a disaster.
Yeah, exactly. And that's how it started off, as like, these are people filling cliche roles, and they're not really characters. They're not really three-dimensional characters for me. And then it evolved into like three-dimensional characters who are separate from these roles, because from their friends' perspectives they have it all, but like they don't. They're falling apart.
I think it changes for like, I think we see Kathy, what is it, Dennis Haysbert's character Raymond, and a bit of Frank as like fully rounded three-dimensional, like I think, but then everyone else, all the other characters, the kids, I totally just see as suburban children. Like in my mind, like I don't like bother to remember their names because they're suburban children.
Well, they kind of represent though, like the purity of that idea. So
I know.
They're like an analogy for like the conservative perspective on that perfect America.
Like
right?
like two beautiful little children.
It's definitely not that they serve no purpose,
One
or
place
that they're
football, one
not
place
like
ballet.
Right.
Yeah,
but it's just.
But how many films? I mean, how many films have like 8 really well-rounded characters that you remember the names of? It's not really how movies work.
Yeah, and the kids like almost are the exception to the developed characters, because the kids represent this ideal that they want, and the kids seem to think that they're living in this ideal, and
Yeah.
like they get, you know, disappointed time and time again because like they want their dad to attend, you know, their like the boy wants his dad to attend his football game, and you know they.
Oh yeah. Okay. So no, I just wanted to say that to talking about the characters being developed. To Justin's point about you guys are 20-ish years old, right? I'm 45, and yet we share. And I'm not going to speak for your other three classmates, Justin, but maybe this is correct. Is that we share this image, this like image of what the perfect white, 4-person family is in a suburban home in Connecticut, right? Like I'm from there. I'm from that city, like I was born in that city. So and leave aside whether you know it or not, but like you've been exposed to it by filmmaking, by media, by commercials for years and years and years. If you almost wherever you grew up, right? So if I think we shouldn't discount the power of our own minds to fill the gaps in the character development in some of these characters. I mean, the only characters that matter in this film are the three that we've been talking about this whole time, which is Frank, Kathy, and Raymond, right? So, I mean, in a way, like I yes, there are supporting characters, yes, there are children and stuff, but of course they don't matter because we know what they represent in this film. And Patricia Clarkson's character as Kathy's sort of best friend is important as well, because obviously it's like with friends like these, who needs enemies? This person is out for herself, and is very and disregards Kathy's either liberal leanings in terms of her flirting with the NAACP, or actually just being Raymond's friend or being seen with Raymond in public, which is just astounding, right? I think to us now in 2020. And then at the end of their last scene that they share together, she says how she thinks of Raymond and how she considers him and wonders what he's doing. And Patricia Clarkson is offended by this. I mean, not only that you shouldn't have a relationship with this person for a number of reasons, not the least of which is race, but also I'm your friend. You should be confiding in me. And it's pretty evil the way that Kathy's treated by that person. So yeah, I just wanted to sort of defend the character development, because I feel like if you really like look at a rom-com or a melodrama or a action movie or whatever, it's like, even if it has an ensemble cast, it's like, how many people with names do you really care about when they're not on screen? And I think this film handles it pretty well.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, I think what I said wasn't very smart. Like I do, but it's more, I'm trying to get at a confusion I have, because in the lecture they said if character drives plot, that tends to be a drama, whereas if plot drives character, that tends to be a melodrama. We've established that this is a melodrama.
Well, we kind of did know the thing though. We didn't have a discussion to establish that. We took it for granted.
We just accepted it because we were told that, and we
kind of did just accept it. But
well, in the defense of the statement, this film might not do that, right? So we haven't discussed that. So that's an interesting thing to discuss as well, which is like, is this more balanced than the average melodrama? Is the formula not that simple? And that's an interesting thing to consider.
Yeah. No, I think, that's what I was trying to get at. But I think that it doesn't maybe adhere to melodrama as perfectly in that sense, because it does feel character driven.
Yeah.
But also I was trying to think, like, it does, I don't know. This is a gray area.
One thing to clarify is like, how do you distinguish? I get, with the difference between character driving plot and plot driving characters, but I don't understand like what mechanisms of the plot would drive the. Like I can't identify and pick out what mechanisms of the plot would motivate character action independent of the characters themselves who are creating the plot. Like
that's interesting. Yeah, I kind of agree with that. I'm thinking about like the first kind of scene in the film that Kathy has with Raymond, and I'm thinking, well, okay, so that is sort of circumstance, but she's driving the plot in a way by asking about his father, right? And then he's driving it by saying he passed away actually, and then what about your daughter? And it's like, well, that their relationship is being driven by their dialogue. But that becomes the plot. So I think Dylan has it right. I mean, it's like, I think it's a hard thing, because if you think about all of the things that happen in this film, it's not a long list, right? I mean, it's the plot is almost takes a back seat in a certain sense. I mean, it's obviously these events are very important to the characters, but I don't know that formula might. I don't know. That's a really interesting question. I'd be interested to hear what the rest of you think about,
Yeah.
if that formula holds up here. Yeah.
And I think that to add to that, like I certainly agree with Dylan's statement, and the um the characters being the characters driving the plot, like the way that that's done in the film makes or made me like get sucked into the film a lot more, and the way that like it's not a bunch of forced plot points that are like it's not like things that just happen and the director decided it, and like the way that it's like all very explained and seems to happen somewhat naturally, like made up for the fact that a lot of a lot of the film was very formalistic for me, and I don't say that implying that like that took away from the film, because like the formalism that I experienced made me enjoy the film much more. But I think like getting getting immersed in a film in the way that many great films kind of capture you was made to like happen more naturally because of just like how character driven the plot was.
Yeah, I would say I think a big crux of the film kind of relied on like Frank's just struggle with his sexuality, which I think it feels character based to me. It doesn't feel
Right.
forced in the film. That's a lot of it.
Well,
A lot of it doesn't feel like just placed in there just to drive the plot forward. Like that's such a character moment, you know?
so it's just, but I got asking the question more like,
Mhm.
I'm basically asking like, at what point does character become distinguished from plot? Like, how do you, where do the like, if I'm like, for me, like a really plot based or plot driven movie, like an angle this movie could have taken, right, would have been like the police get involved.
Yeah.
And they're like a part of there's no specific like officer necessarily, but it's just the police like doing something about Kathy's relationship with Deegan. I don't know why I keep calling him Deegan. That's not his name.
I have a rough answer, an attempt at an answer, which is like, as your viewing experience for maybe a plot driven is like defined by just this wild ride of beats of plot twist and
Yeah.
just being like whoa,
And then
that
yeah,
happened,
and
that happened, that
a
happened.
bunch of random encounters.
Yeah.
Like they don't really have as many random encounters. The exceptions to this are when I'm forgetting all the characters' names. Like that scene where the random guy on the street is like, "Hey, what are you doing there?"
Yes.
Put your hands off of her, and like that is something that I experience as like like being put there. The filmmaker gods put that character there, but like that didn't take away from the immersion of the film for me. Like it was done seamlessly. But I stand by the statement that almost all of like the way that the story played out is like in response to characters that have been established, and that's what forwarded it, and that's what added to like convinced me that this story happened.
Yeah, I think I mean I would love to. I mean, I kind of the next time I talk to Manon, I think I'm going to run this by him. But like, I have a hard time thinking of this film as being plot driven at all, because it's everything that happens in it is about their interior lives, and they're not interacting. That's the problem, is that they're not interacting well with the outside world. They're all in their own heads, and they're not saying what they feel enough, and the idea of melodrama is it's all on the table. We're putting it all out there, and for the characters in this film, it's a lot of yearning and being denied what they want, and for those three main characters that we're talking about. And so nothing happens without them having those desires, right? And those objects of their desires as well. So yeah, I don't know that it's interesting to think of plot in terms of this film, because it's like, it's very small moves being made, except for obviously with Frank and Raymond's characters whose lives are exploded by this, right? But with Julianne Moore, who I would argue is the main character, she ends up right back where she was. There's no plot for her. She loses her husband, and the guy that she's in love with leaves, and she's just sitting in her house with her kids. And it's like, I mean, it's really tragic, So it's in a way, a lot happens to her, but she ends up right back where she was. And without I think their carefully sculpted performances in a way, I think this film goes south really fast. Like I think all three of them are like pitch perfect in the roles. And I don't, yeah, it's hard for me to imagine other people or how that would work with somebody else in those roles. I think they all work really well. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I think a lot of this film is it doesn't, at least in my opinion, I might have like a misunderstanding of plot driving character, but it feels character driven. The one thing I would like kind of say is like how Frank kind of just like meets some guy when they're on vacation, they end up falling in love. That feels a bit kind of more plot. It kind of just happens. We don't really see any of it. We don't really have an
Yeah, I was
understanding.
gonna bring that up.
Yeah, but besides that, for the most part, it's just,
No, and also he's meeting people, and he's meeting people all over the place. I mean, that's the idea of the nature of his secrets, right? But I think the bigger problem of the film, or the bigger conflict of the film, is the interior of those characters, and that he can't stop this quote unquote behavior, because it's not behavior at all, right? It's his identity, right? He's of course.
Yeah, and the fact that like his romantic relationship and the evolution of like him falling in love with this mystery person wasn't a big plot point. I think that added to it, because it's the movie's from the movie's not really from his perspective.
It's more Julian.
Yeah. And that's and that's what made and so like not including his like love storyline, I think it simplified the overall plot, and it also like it took away from kind of our sense of like being God and watching this play out.
Yeah.
It took away from like us knowing every single thing that's going on, which I think tends to occur in movies where like we see 10 different characters and we see everything that they do, like every important thing, of course, that they do, and in this case, like we learn the important things that they do, and they don't go into detail in the way that some movies would, I think, would try and display on screen.
Yeah, kind of arguing what I said. I think and sort of what you were talking about, like, being on the perspective of Kathy. I think by not seeing the relationship develop between Frank and this other guy, I think it kind of like adds how abrupt it is when she's kind of just dropped on her, like, hey, I'm in love with someone else, and her whole lifetime just shattered there.
And it also makes us less sympathetic towards like his developing love story. I think it makes us get less emotionally invested in his his relationship, and instead of it being a married guy meets this like great beautiful or like another man in this case like meets someone else who's like perfect for them, and they have like a textbook like notebook love story. Like instead of it being that, it's like she like it shows like the consequences of that. And it makes us like, though we're incredibly sympathetic towards him, and I was incredibly sympathetic towards him because he's living in this world where like he's not accepted and not like can't be himself. Like I'm not invested in his love life. I'm invested in his family and his like actual life.
I think it adds, because the melodrama kind of takes the central character and kind of places them on a pedestal, kind of more. They really want their central character to be sympathetic. And so I think even though like we do kind of sympathize with Frank to a certain extent, if without seeing our relationship develop, kind of allows our sympathy to still be placed more on Kathy's character.
And it takes away from like us being it. I think we would be a bit more like upset with Kathy.
Yeah,
if we had seen their relationship, and if we had been given a perspective that made us fall in love with Frank and his partner, like that would have completely changed how I felt about Kathy. That would have made I think it would have made me feel like in a way Kathy was in the wrong for being upset about this, and for like I would kind of critique her more, but I don't, because I didn't get that perspective.
Remember, I mean, not only does Frank hit her at one point, but he also insults her in front of at a party in front of the party that they're hosting in front of his friends about how ugly she is before she puts her makeup on. I mean, he's not really a good guy. I mean, he also drinks to excess, doesn't come home until late, is not interested in the kids. I mean, it's sort of, I don't know that one tweak would have made Frank's character sympathetic in the way that Raymond's character is sort of effortlessly sympathetic. I mean, he's clearly loving and intellectual and sensitive, and he's a gardener. He has he has transferable skills here where we get the sense that this other guy's just working for a corporation. We don't even know what the hell it does, right? It's like plastic.
Yeah.
So
but I think
he seems like more painted as the villain in this movie, even though yes, all three of the characters are in impossible situations. Absolutely.
Yeah, I just real quick, I'm sorry, but the I think like the reason that we experience that, and like I'd forgotten about the scene where he hits her, but like I think that seeing more of his side of things would change my perspective on him. And like I think I wouldn't excuse his bad behavior, and I would like acknowledge his flaws, but like in a way you can come to sympathize with villains in movies.
Yeah. I mean, you can do that about any character. If you knew more about them, you might sympathize more with them. I think that's
exactly. Yeah.
Because I think we did delve more into Frank's character. I think you kind of I think I would be able to sympathize with him more, just because if he was kind of forced into kind of entering the kind of normal relationship that he probably does not want, and he knows he doesn't want on the inside, and just thinking about years and years of years being stuck in a position you don't want to be in, that you feel forced to be in. And I could understand like some pent up regression, sort of pent up just resentment towards his entire family. I could see, because he
like the people who put him in this position in a way. I mean, yes, he's responsible for his own actions, but like he's in this position partially in as a result of like his wife, and that is the source of the suffering in his life, is kind of in a way his wife and kids, because he doesn't want to be with them. But like it's not her fault, she didn't do anything. Like it was
again,
like
I think it speaks to kind of just like the societal pressures around them. I think kind of
exactly like society like treats them all very tragically, which is.
Does Kathy have problematic character traits in this film, and if so, what are they?
Yes.
Yeah. I or Giancarlo, here you go ahead.
Yeah, and I'm down. I would say I think she kind of falls into the like supremely like innocent housewife thing. That's like, I don't know. It's just like she just can't. There's ways that her privilege is so obvious, and she is starting to realize it and doesn't really know what to do about it. And so she just kind of does things that like are good intentioned, but maybe like just still come off as like maybe savoury or like
I would say kind of just she has a bit of a character flaw just in how much she kind of wants to uphold her image within the community, and how she kind of lacks agency because of it. Like she's not really willing to take steps to benefit her. Like she'll continue to try to keep this relationship going with her husband. I don't think it's out of love necessarily. I think it's out of just how much it would ruin her life and people's perspective of her if that were to fall apart.
Yeah.
So I think she just relies too much on that, and what she like that external desire to like be accepted in that community.
Yeah.
And I think that contributes. I think it's like a sign of her just general. Like I think her biggest character flaw is her selflessness. Honestly, which is that's not the worst character. That's not the worst character flaw to have, but it definitely is like her kind of like her tragic flaw pretty much, because she has things to give everybody else, but in the end, when everybody else is gone, she has nothing left. She has no one to give to. She has the kids, but kind of.
She's
like,
struggling.
And she and at the end when she's like she's broke pretty much, so she can't even get to them anymore. So because she's so selfish in the end of the movie, when everybody leaves her, she doesn't have anyone else to give to. So I think that's her tragic flaw.
movie.
Yeah.
Here, go ahead, Soren, and then
I was smiling when Dylan was talking because it's like when you graduate and you're in a job interview and somebody asks if you have what your biggest weakness is, don't say I'm a perfectionist, like, or I'm selfless. That's my biggest weakness. It's sort of like there is something there. I was wondering though. I mean, I guess what I was sort of like, and maybe Justin will speak to this. I mean, I guess I was wondering if you thought that, and again, with the reminder that this is 1957, but if you thought there was some um, performance inherent in the way that she treated race, was there some kind of, and I mean, to use the phrase virtue signaling might be less friendly than it should be, but she kind of comes out and says, well, I support the NAACP and I'm not prejudiced and all this, and I wondered if you thought that was pretty genuine or whether that felt a little a little forced.
I think so. Something I really noticed about her was like, I feel like as a character, she's kind of like in the eyes of like, a boomer, she's like perfect. She's like the most liberal, like least racist person you could ever meet. But then
not all boomers are progressive, man.
Yeah, well, that's like in the eyes of like a boomer who like wants to be like us,
like my parents,
yeah, or my parents actually, and like even though they're not boomers, but
yeah.
like I think, however, she like talks the talk and is like, oh yeah, I'm like the most progressive person of my friends, I'll speak out against the injustices that they do, and like I'll like judge them silently when they say racist or homophobic things.
Mm-hmm.
But I think like when it comes down to it, her privilege is not something she would ever give up, and I don't think she would actually put anything on the line to help like the black people in her life, like she's not as liberal as she appears to be. And like what goes on in her head, I think, is like when she does these nice things, she's like, oh, what will look the best? What will appear to be the most like sacred? And I think she's like in a way showing off to Raymond. Is that yeah. I think she shows off to people, and she like shows off her virtue.
But it's really like her advocacy for like racial injustice is not a good look for her ever.
Yeah, it's true.
But like, no part of that helps her benefit her.
She's
that's
punished for it essentially, right? I mean,
but in a way, she
that is right on. Yeah.
But yeah, and like she's not showing off to her friends. She's kind of in a way showing off to us. Like she's.
I think she's because she's so new to it, she doesn't really know how to go at it.
Yeah.
But she's making the effort to kind of like to educate herself.
Yeah.
I think she has the desire.
And by the end of the movie,
exactly.
I think she wants to help, but I think she's just not willing enough to go further enough where she's gonna jeopardize her.
Yeah, and I also think like, and this is in part because of like the time period that she exists in. But I think that like her ignorance makes her like unable to help to the extent that she wants, that she like in her heart wants to. And like I think that things that she does that she thinks are respectful, are helpful, like little like efforts that she makes to help those around her who are like suffering from kind of the oppressions of like their world that they live in. I would argue that like in heart they're good, but they're not. Her ignorance makes her unable to help in the way that she thinks she's helping.
Well, she's on the path towards it. That's her character development. And
No,
fact, that's arguably the only realm she has any actual agency on, dude. Everything else that's in the movie is stuff that's like happening to her, and because of how other people's desires and stuff. But her her passion for like racial justice is the only thing she actually is like. That's her way of interacting with the world, man.
Yeah,
that's it.
And I'm not arguing that she's, that she doesn't have the drive and doesn't exercise her ability to
No, you're just saying that her ignorance is preventing her from doing
I'm
that.
saying her ignorance prevents her from like effectively like being this, you know, perfect like social justice person. Like,
I don't think it's her ignorance. I think it's really just community around her.
but the community
Just how
around
she
her
is
has
kind of
kind of
suffering
has
for
kind
it.
of shaped her. Like the community around her wants her to be
Yeah, but they
this
don't,
like
they don't want
oppressor.
her. They don't want her to help black people. Though.
Exactly.
They don't
But
want her.
the thing is like
And she
like
doesn't really care what they think at the end of the day.
but the thing is like living in that community, I think has made her experience like made her like what her sense of what is helpful and what is good and what she should do is changed based on like what she based on like what should be what she should do. I'm sorry, like I lost my train of thought just there, but
We're Justin. I mean, you said this perfect social justice person. I mean, what this film proves is that there is no perfect blank person to speak of. So we're all doing our best with what we have, the tools at our disposal, the effort that we can make based on external factors. So I have an 11:30, but I got to run. And it was really, really good to talk to you guys.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. We really
Yeah,
appreciate
thank you
it.
so
This was a
much.
great discussion to have.
Thanks for having me. Sorry to leave so abruptly. I forgot I have this other session. So
oh no,
It's
it's
all good.
okay.
Don't worry about it.
All right,
great
thanks.
to talk to you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Have a good one.
we really appreciate it.
Yes.
Have a great rest of your day.